20 minutes, Karen?
Yes. 2025.
On the clock. Check, check.
Yeah.
Check, check, check.
No.
Better?
Yeah.
Check,
Good,
check, check, check.
yes,
Yes.
very good.
I'll just hold it.
So,
No,
not
don't
too
hold
close, not too close, not too far. This is perfect, this is perfect.
Okay. It's a little big on me, so it'll fall, but we'll just keep it rolling. Thank you. Not to brag, but this light beam came through me. I don't know if you heard him say that. And this light being, we co-create in life right now that is sacred and extraordinary. So always I begin with love and gratitude, and my list of gratitude is typically lengthy, except that I'm trying to bring you this and the Bhagavad Gita and the teaching of the guides in like 20 minutes, so I'm gonna keep it brief and just say, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I always cannot help but notice how every time I come, without any prompting, like Joe in his selection from the reading, Jack in his selection from the reading, everything always says exactly what I'm here to talk to you about, and it always blows my mind. So I do want to like cherry pick some of the messages that they just gave you and pull it forward in the teaching today. And I actually am here to give you something that is practical, tangible, functional, not just a teaching, not just an esoteric philosophy, but actually what you can do. And by the way, why it matters. So the first things I want to pull out from what's already been contributed are, Joe said, God is everything. God is everything. And of course in miracles, God is everything or nothing. God is everything, every single thing, even and especially the things that you think you would not have chosen. God is. So we'll be talking about that. He also said release and let go, so that you can just, I'm going to say, dissolve into divine presence, and that actually is what we're talking about today. And then Jack talked about jealousy. I'm going to pull forward what you damns you back, and what you hold in darkness brings you with it. And he also talked about, now this is where I get to unpack it like a lot. He said, what if you were to go into the attic and you were to find a box of your childhood, and as you leaf through the box of your childhood in the attic, that actually is what I want to talk to you about today. Like, this is always extraordinary, and it is always my pleasure to be here. And I appreciate that you support this center, because this center, Yucca Valley Center for Spiritual Living, needs to not just survive but thrive. So we all stand up and make our contributions. So it will be so. My talk So my talk today is called The Art of Unwinding, and it is a technique for stopping egoic momentum. And what does all of that mean? And what it means is that I'm going to cherry pick one of 112 meditations for centering. And this book of secrets is by Osho, also known as Bhagwan Rajneesh. But I'm going to reference other teachings like Course in Miracles, Bhagavad Gita, and the teaching of the guides, which is of source, which we've offered to teach here at the Center for Spiritual Living when you have enough interest in attending live in person. So hold that thought. Now, just a recap from my other talks, we always have to start this way. If we are vibrational beings in a vibrational plane, then what presents as this density of form, who you think you are, starts at the causal field of thoughts and beliefs. It's thought identification, egoic construct, who we think we are. And those have been other talks and will be other talks, but also overlaid with limiting beliefs, agreements made in fear. It's a lot to unpack. But we have this thought identification body in the causal field. By the way, it's our self-perception. It's our personality self. Hold that. We then have the astral body, the astral plane and field, which is the emotional body. And 100% of the time, your emotions are directly in response to your thoughts and beliefs, self-perceptions, and so on and so on. And then the form itself, the body, got individuated through thought, form, and field, is actually a reconciliation of the two. So Denise knows any presentation of disease, injury, illness, diagnosis, and in yoga, I would even say habitual tone, accidents, injuries, they are always indications as to what's going on in the causal field and what I would call where your spiritual work lies. Now, we've also talked in other talks, and you can look those up, by the way. You can go back to the talks I've given here that I'm a little skipping over because now we're moving forward. The egoic construct primarily resides in the left hemisphere of the brain. And this is really important because the left hemisphere of the brain is a processor. That is what I would call very laborious. Like when you start to realize how hard it is to just take everything into these olfactory human senses, right? So in other words, we think and we read and we speak in a language in which a letter and a letter and a letter make a word and a word and a word make a sentence, paragraph, chapter, book. Like that is just a lot, right? And time is linear in the left hemisphere. This is super important. It's the tantamount to today's teaching. So time is linear. There's a past. And by the way, we're talking about the ego residing in this linear timeline where we take the past and we activate it to project into a future. And by doing so, we perpetuate the survival of the ego by avoiding, Joe, pure time presence, where divinity resides. Okay. Is there anything else I need to tell you about that? Yes. If there are only two choices, of course, in miracles, love and fear, fear resides in the left hemisphere. Identification of self as separate, as opposed to true union. And in the separateness resides fear, judgment, skepticism, cynicism, and so on and so on and so on. It's not true union, it's I am me, and I am entitled to my opinions, and you, and so on and so on. So you can kind of hear all of that aspect of the ego and the personality self. Okay, and that's mainly where we're talking today. So here's the question. If I called this the art of unwinding, techniques for stopping egoic momentum, the repeating of the patterns, the repeating of the lessons by projecting the past. It's always been this way, it always will be this way, right? Why should we stop egoic momentum? Why should we work to overcome the ego? Well, remember, I just got done saying to you, and you've heard it said before, these are not my words. I love what, I think Jack said it. He was like, I'm not sure who said it, or was it me? You know, like I do that all the time, but I don't think I own this one. And we don't see things as they are. We see things as we are. We take a self-perception, we project it. By the way, that's our point of attraction. We project it into the field, we inform the field with our self-perception, and then we look for evidence that we are correct, even and especially when our self-perceptions are rooted in lies. Fear, judgment, separateness, limited beliefs, and agreements made in fear and relation, perpetuating the patterns, surviving the ego, and so on and so on. So it holds us in patterns in our life that are limiting. Because remember, what you down jams you back. What you hold in darkness brings you with it, right? And so we gotta stop that. And this is a technique to do that. That's why I picked it. Yep, and when we cleanse, have you ever heard it said this way or thought of it this way? When we cleanse and clear our very own consciousness, our very own self-perception, which by the way is our projection and therefore our point of attraction and so on, then every aspect of ourselves, and remember on every level of being, the thoughts and beliefs, the egoic construct, the astral body, feelings, emotions, and the physical, which, by the way, is the reconciliation of the two, and that's where we hold all of our dis-ease. All of that is cleansed, all of that is cleared, and then we have a new, I'm not even going to call it point of attraction. I'm going to call it way of being, through presence and being. God is, God is, God is, God is. Okay, that's why. So you can be fully transformed, fully liberated, and then, as I said, know who you are in truth, know what you are and how you serve, and we can leave the unreal, we can leave the false, and serve in purity through presence and being, in love through presence and being. So, how to dissolve, resolve, release that grip that the ego has on us. This morning, Spencer and I were on the deck. I was gathering my thoughts, and I said, if something was just like gripping relentlessly, like, and it won't let go, like, how could you call that? And we're like likening it to like a pit bull, like locking its jaw. that's like what the ego does to us. It's tricky. So how can we resolve that relentless grip of the ego? And I selected for today the 10th century technique from the Book of Secrets, which is 112 tantric meditations. And by the way, the only thing that tantra means is technique of centering. Technique of centering. Tantra just means technique of centering. And it doesn't matter what you center it on, the centering is what matters. So, this one says, in a few different ways. Now, first it says, see the past as a dream, look at your past, disidentified. We could also say reperceived, and this is the act of what's called unwinding. And what I want you to know is we all have these kind of flashes of our past during the day, and sometimes your flash of the past is from your childhood, right? The box in the attic that you start to leaf through. And sometimes the thoughts of the past are a love affair that you had with someone who is or isn't in your life. The loss of a loved one, maybe a parent, family or friend. But our mind constantly takes us back, takes us back, takes us back. So many times during the day that we can't keep track. But the problem is, every single thought has, the problem or not, hopefully not after today, the problem or not is that every single thought has an emotional response. And that is what we're unwinding. Because the emotional response is a trigger that again is a self-perception, the projection, the point of attraction, then we look for the evidence of it. So you're gonna go back in that moment every time you notice that you have a recollection of a significant past event, but this time you'll be visiting it as an observer. This takes some practice. We have to train the mind. So I'm going to give you 2 ways to train the mind. But remember it as if you're observing, like you're looking at somebody else's life, and it doesn't mean be unattached or detached. Be attentive, be aware, be a witness, but don't re-engage in that moment on the emotional level, because when you re-engage, if you become angry, you hold the anger, now you're going to carry the anger forward again, and so on. Just only observe this as if you were the fly on the wall, or as if it's happening to someone else. You're observing the lives of others. Because if you become angry, then you're re-identified in the egoic construct. And that's actually, bless you, what we're trying to rewind, what we're trying to unwind, what we're trying to reperceive, what we're trying to release, and so on and so on. So I'm going to teach you at least 2 ways in which you can do what I'm going to call meditate backwards. And we'll call this unwinding. Osho called this unwinding. It's a technique, by the way, that was widely used by Buddha. And, little known fact, it was also a technique used by Mahavira, who founded Dianetics. You remember that? And the levels of clearing? That's actually what I'm talking to you about. So it's been used for many, many things. It's been used for insomnia and sleeplessness. Is there anyone in this room that has a hard time sleeping at night? It's also been used, more importantly, for healing dis-ease, because remember, we have the thought body, thoughts and beliefs, the astral plane, the emotional body, feelings and emotions in response to the thoughts and beliefs, and then your body is like the breaker box, like the circuit breaker. So when these two are in discord and conflict, self-loathing, fear, and so on, you trip a circuit, and we call that disease. Old diseases carry over from the past, and you try when you have the manifestation of a disease. Is that better? Is that better? Yeah, see, this thing is so big on my head. I kind of have to hold it or it's just going to keep falling. So you try everything, you try. You've got this problem, that problem, nothing helps. So those are unresolved, lingering, dormant triggers of disease that are psychologically rooted, and nobody likes to be told that their ailments are psychologically rooted. But the source of all things is the cause, the causal field. So those are rooted in history and stored in the tissues, and we can go back to those moments of assault that we've carried. We can unwind and release and resolve on the level of the causal, the astral, and the physical. Deep healing, deep release, deep catharsis. Now, 2 ways to do it. First, we have to retrain the mind. I've got to give myself 5 more minutes, just so you know. We have to retrain the mind. And the easiest way to do that, the easiest way to get started doing that, is by making it a practice of counting from 100 down to 0. Doesn't that sound so simple? But easy but not simple, because the mind is unaccustomed. Remember that linear aspect of ego? As a matter of fact, here's the way it works for most people. You lie your body down at night when you go to bed. You go to bed. Fixing to get ready, got all that. And you go, now what happened today? And your mind naturally starts at the beginning. And your mind relives this entire day from start to finish. And then you fall asleep. And when you wake up in the morning, your mind goes, where did I leave off? What's today? What happened yesterday? Okay, here we go. This is the ego. It's the ego on the timeline, pushing it forward, keeping the patterns going. So we can learn how to unwind that. And as I say, the easiest way is to start to count from 100 down to 0. Now, lie your body down at night. Take a few deep breaths. This is your assignment. I want you to start doing this. And it doesn't just have to be when you lay your body down at night. So when you start counting at 100, you're like, oh yeah, no, I got this. But then, like clockwork, you're sound asleep. It will put you to sleep. And or you'll make a mistake. And by the way, if you make a mistake, it seems like, oh, I don't have the concentration, I lost track. Start over. Frequently, when I have people do this out loud, they make a mistake that they didn't notice. So if you make a mistake and you happen to notice it, start over. Train your mind to unwind, to meditate backwards. Now, Jet, that's the first assignment. I want you to do that. That is a practical, tangible tool that you can use. Now, the next is more of a challenge, and that is when you lie your body down at night, unwind your day from what just happened all the way down to the morning. And for sure at first, you'll be falling asleep. You won't be able to make it all the way from night down to morning, which by the way is not a bad thing, right? So practice this, and eventually you'll be able to go from, most importantly, remember, you're doing this as the observer. You're not re-engaging. So remember, if you had that argument, somebody verbally assaulted you during the day, you're not there to get out so that you can win the fight. You're not there to re-engage and carry forth that emotional charge. You are the observer. You are the observer, and even if you need to see that as there is this man and this other man and he insulted him, and then before that this happened, and before that this happened, you're simply an observer. You're not re-engaging, you're not judging, assessing, or reacting to it. So start at the night from when you lie down and go slowly. Because if you go slowly, you will be surprised that you bring in much more detail than you realized was there. Maybe somebody is singing in the background. You'll be surprised what comes for you in that deep backwards meditation. So start by, here's what just happened. I just had some water. Before that, I brushed my teeth. While I was brushing my teeth, I happened to notice, go through the day backwards. Slowly, paying attention as an observer without re-engaging. And over time, you'll be able to get all the way back to the morning when you woke up. Now, this is like a mental muscle that we're using. We're unaccustomed to it. But when you get really, really good, then you can go from the time you lie your body down all the way down to 5 or 6. There's like this physical barrier in our memory that stops at about 5 or 6. So once you are accustomed to this, you can remember back to like the age of 3. And as you get better, you can remember back to actually the birth. As you get better, you can remember back to, let's say, the womb space. After you get better, you can go back to the in-between incarnations when you were not in form. And after that, you're free to sail all of the incarnations. And the really funny thing is that, see if I can find that quote. Oh, by the way, I did want to tell you this. Krishna from the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that humanity is in basically a drugged unconscious stupor during sleep. And that's what he calls the dream state. And he says the yogi doesn't sleep with dream state. The yogi relaxes in a deep meditative theta state in perfect awareness and complete relaxation. And that is when dreaming is no longer required. And by the way, now we talk about breath and some other things. So I just want to kind of go to the end, believe it or not, is that when you've kind of broken that barrier of 5 or 6 and then 3 and then womb space and the in-betweens, Bhagavan Rajneesh Osho says now you can see that all that nonsense is the same. So it's just funny to have that perception of in this life, and this life, and this life, and this life, all of that nonsense was the same. It was this repeating pattern of the ego just perpetuating its survival, and now you're free. So you're liberated, transformed, purity of presence. And in that moment, Buddha would say, all desire stops. All desire stops. All desire stops, and you are liberated. So now you are the divine being, not the divine doing, the divine being. And acting through thought, form, and field, enlightened, illuminated, radiance, divine being, serving through your own presence and being, without the judgment, reaction, attachment, resistance that resides there in the left hemisphere, the egoic construct of humanity, or personality self. And in this place, you know who you are in truth. You know what you are in truth. And you know how you serve in truth. In purity, love, and presence. Through presence and being. And God is. I am here. I am free. I have come. And God is.